Biopics or biopics, however you say the word, the genre is one that sometimes delivers big time and sometimes crashes and burns. Even when it comes to just Beatles-related productions out there, it's a spectrum of experiences. Some of them are extremely worthwhile, and some of them, not so good. I'm pleased to say, however, that Backbeat from 1994 is more on the good side of the ledger than not. Basically, this is the story of the Beatles in their early days. They've moved on from being just kids going to school and learning guitar, and are at the point of being able to go to Hamburg to take up a residency in a music club. Not the highest class establishment, I grant you. The guys do multiple sets a night to drunken sailors with strippers performing when they're not on stage. And notably, this is a period where the band was a five-piece. John Lennon's mate, Stuart Sutcliffe, was on bass, meaning Lennon, McCartney and Harrison were all on guitar duties, and pre-Ringo star, Pete Best, was on drums. But it's Stu that the movie hones in on. An artist who wasn't really interested in playing music all that much, Stu is just happy to be in Hamburg, get up close and personal with some German girls, and rejoice in being young and free and doing whatever he feels like. When he meets Astrid Kircher, however, all of that changes. Astrid, a German photographer, is brought to see the band by her bestie and sometime lover Klaus Vormann, and she and Stu quickly end up in a relationship where she has the upper hand, being a little more worldly and arty, which Stu really leans into, having an artistic background himself. But far from being an imbalanced relationship, she's absolutely smitten with him too. In real life, Astrid was, of course, a huge part of the Beatles' legend. Not only did she obviously date a Beatle, albeit a pre-fame Beatle, but she took super iconic photos of the guys in Hamburg and also influenced their move away from rocker haircuts to mod haircuts. This is shown in the film as being modelled by Stu first. Lennon's reaction is classic, and Stu observes that she's turning him into Klaus, who also sports the same look. Later in the film, of course, we see all the Beatles adopt the look, aside from Pete Best, perhaps a subtle indicator of how in sync with the band he was. Of course, the Stu and Astrid story doesn't have a happy ending, as many people watching this will already know, but for those who don't, I'll say no more. Musically, the film has a killer soundtrack. Rather than use Beatles recordings, which would have been expensive and, in a very particular sense, songs that the group hadn't written at this point anyway, the producers got together a covers band. Not just any covers band, mind you, this band featured a pre-Foo Fighters Dave Grohl of Nirvana at the time, Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth, and Mike Mills of R.E.M., among others, to race through rough and ready rock and roll standards of the kind the Beatles would play during this era. And you know what? It feels so right. On one hand, it's what the guys were playing in this era, so there's a tick. And as an added bonus, several of these songs did end up as covers on early Beatles albums, so they feel like Beatles songs anyway, even if they aren't Lennon-McCartney compositions. You sometimes wonder what the subjects think of films like this, and in the case of Paul McCartney, we actually have a comment. Quote, "One of my annoyances about the film Backbeat is they've actually taken my rock and rollness off me. They give John the song Long Tall Sally to sing, and he never sang it in his life, but now it's set in cement. I was quite taken, however, with Stephen Dorff's astonishing performance as Stu." End quote. While Macca's comment isn't entirely positive with regard to his character, and remember this is the guy who didn't like his portrayal in Nowhere Boy either, as the actor was too short, Astrid Kircher also praised the accuracy and detail of her relationship with Stu Sutcliffe. So there's two votes from people who were there and are portrayed in the film that the story is very realistic with regard to Stu, and as he's the focus of the film, I think you'll agree that's a very good sign if you're watching this and wondering, how close is this to real life? The film received further positive response from Julian Lennon, Pete Best, and Sutcliffe's sister Pauline, who said, "I think the director did a fabulous job, it's a good movie." Something that struck me the first time I watched the film in the cinema back in 1994, and every time since on home media, are the closing scenes. We're at a beach which featured earlier in the film with John and his future wife Cynthia, along with Astrid and Stu, and they're all running around, playing, being zany, and being young. This lovely scene is undercut with a written description of what we've just seen happen at the conclusion of the film, just to make clear what had happened, as well as a comment on what happened to the characters later on, concluding by mentioning that John was shot dead in 1980. It's one of those moments where, although you know very well that John died in 1980, when you see it juxtaposed with footage of someone playing him as a very young man, pre-fame, having fun in Germany, the thought that he'll become uber famous and have some idiot shoot him in America when he's only 40 years old, it suddenly really hits home. It makes you think how pointless it all was and how it robbed the world of another 40 plus years of his talent. But of course the film isn't about John, it's Stu, and you're also left wondering there what might have happened had things turned out differently. I mean, Klaus Vormann ended up playing bass on Lennon's Imagine LP. Klaus! I mean, part of me thinks Stu could have done that. Wouldn't that have been a cool thing? Also, speaking of Klaus, he designed the cover for the Beatles' Revolver album. What if Stu had designed a Beatles sleeve? I mean, he was an artist. The possibilities are delicious, and it's really sad that they never had a chance to happen. Anyway, have you seen Backbeat? What did you think of it? Why not tell me your thoughts down below in the comments?